kiss for you.
Alright, today we're looking at the 10 games I really think deserved more in 2024. These can be for things like it going under the radar, it not getting a ton of critical reception or commercial reception, it kind of being devoid of discussion around the time that it launched in between other things, anything like that. These are games I really think that should be more in the spotlight, and I'm going to highlight them here. These are relatively in order, meaning the first couple are going to be ones that you probably heard about, and then towards the end of the list, they're going to be ones that you definitely haven't heard about, just so that we can get some variety in there. All right, number 10 is one that you've probably heard about and seen on a couple other lists for favorite games or best games of the year. It's Prince of Persia: The Lost Crown. Now, the reason this is at number 10 is because it is something that did get a decent amount of attention when it launched. It got a really good 87 on Metacritic and OpenCritic. It also had a decent amount of fan engagement in it, as well as some DLC. And generally speaking, people really liked it, and it made it onto a bunch of lists because of that quality. However, overall, especially coming out at the end of January, it was one of the first games released of the year and didn't really get a lot of consideration as time went on. This is a really fantastic Metroidvania style game with interesting and sort of varied combos in its combat, as well as a pretty good system of being able to basically screenshot and take a snapshot of whatever you're looking for in the map and then pin that to the map. So every time you open the map, you're able to kind of see everything there and be able to remind yourself, hey, this is why I, screenshot this spot. You can go back to it pretty easily. Things like the cinematics and the way they kind of flow and work and change your camera perspective is really interesting. It runs really well, especially right now as the footage you're seeing is on Switch. It runs at 60 frames on Switch. I'm not sure if the capture is able to capture that, but at least it runs 60 on Switch. It looks really nice on Switch. It plays wonderfully on a bunch of other options. Works great with keyboard and mouse, I believe, as well as controller. It's just a really nice game that runs well, is very fun. It's not that long. You can get it for like 20 bucks at this point, right? It's a really interesting Metroidvania with those unique elements. The quality of its combat, quality of its animations, and just the fluidity of how it plays is really something that I think definitely gets overlooked. And so that's why it's number 10 on this list. I would definitely highly recommend it. As I said before, it's on PC, PS5, Xbox, and Switch. Now, number 9 is something that you also probably heard about, but it didn't necessarily get the recognition, and also something that got snubbed during the Game Awards. It's Unicorn Overlord. Now, this game kind of got, similar to Prince of Persia, a very good critical reception. It got an 88 on OpenCritic as well as Metacritic, I believe, and had a lot of, fan engagement and support. However, I did not see a lot of discussion about this game when it came out, and I also didn't see a lot of discussion towards the end of the year in the Game Awards when they were talking about strategy games, right? It was kind of acknowledged, but kind of brushed to the side. This is a really shockingly well-designed game in the kind of tactics ogre style, Fire Emblem style strategy RPG that sees you kind of going through these formations and building up these formations of units to do battles similar to something like Fire Emblem. So you can equip them with things like swords and shields and all that, but then you also have the tactics system. So battles are automatic, similar to something like Fire Emblem, and similar to Fire Emblem as well, you get things like being able to adjust their armor and weapons and things, but you get the tactics system, which basically lets you auto select different conditions that these automatic attacks go under. So the example given is Elaine's Lean Edge, which is an attack that basically heals him if he defeats an enemy. You can set that condition to be lowest enemy targeted, so that he'll probably kill it and then get the health back, right? So you can kind of customize and mix and match there. A lot of this game is about the micromanagement, but I like that because that is the main part of the game, right? A lot of the game is spent in these menus, reorganizing your units and upgrading them and doing that, because that is where the fun of the game is. I also really think this is a game that lends itself well to the kind of just general exploration of the game. I'm pretty sure qualified as like an open world game, right? You're able to go to different parts of the overworld map there, go into towns, get stuff what you need, and then go on these side quests. And these side quests can be story quests, they can be liberation quests where you're trying to liberate an area, and they can also be general side quests, getting resources, that kind of thing. But it's just really nice and really easy to play. And it's also really nice because it keeps track of a lot of stuff. It will keep track of how much you've traversed, what part of the story you're on, where you're at, what items you're held, that kind of thing. It's really easy in this kind of game to kind of get lost in it and just keep playing and playing, and it's quite long for that. I think the average time to beat is like 50 to 60 hours, around that time, and I'm having a great time. I haven't beat it yet, but I'm definitely having a really good time there, and I think more people need to look at this game. Part of why it didn't necessarily get all the discussion it should have is because it only is released on PlayStation and Nintendo Switch. No Xbox, no PC. But I do think that if you're on one of those platforms, you can pick it up. I picked up the physical version on Amazon for like $30. It's often on sale physically for like $40. You can usually get it digitally for around $40 as well. But it is just a really good game. It runs fantastic on Switch, which is where you're seeing this footage. Again, I don't think it captures it, but I'm pretty sure this also runs at 60. Performs really well right there. No problems with that. Everything's extremely responsive as well. A lot of the time you'll find these games, especially on Switch, they feel very laggy and feel like there's a ton of input delay and latency and all that. There isn't any of that. It's just a really good game in terms of how it performs and how it works and the quality of the strategy RPG in this. And it's a shame that in the Game Awards, it got snubbed. So definitely check that out if you're interested in Unicorn Overlord. All right, number 8 is a game that kind of got brushed under the rug because of its general category. Once Human is a sci-fi open world survival game, similar to something like Secret World, if you've played that. The best way I could describe it is something like if you took The Division and its kind of gameplay loop and structure and you added sci-fi elements, sci-fi monsters and different events and all that. This game brushed under the rug for a couple of reasons. One, some of the mechanics are a little clunky. Two, it had the NetEase logo attached to it at the time. And 3, it had a very strict seasonal reset structure that a lot of people kind of didn't necessarily like. Ultimately, what keeps this game together, and I made a review about it on this channel, what keeps this game together is its quality of its interaction with its survival elements and its other elements, right? The kind of monster battling elements. And so what you do is you have, standard base building and all that, but you have deviants, which are basically little like pets you can grab. And they do a lot of things. Some do damage, some do defense, some do support, all that. And you can take these and go around the world on your motorcycle and everything else and find these bosses. And they could be bosses, they could be normal enemies, all that. And you're using them to basically boost up your base building capability. Beating enemies to get acid, to be able to craft for things, getting blueprints, getting, materials that you can sell, all that. And it's really nice because a lot of these bosses and mechanics are designed quite well. There's a very good atmosphere around this game. It sort of feels like if you combine something like, again, The Division, maybe something like Days Gone, right? But it's an MMO. There's a lot of other people playing at that same time as you. They're all wandering around. They're all doing that. And you can depend if you want to do PvP or PvE or not, right? And so overall, I think this game just didn't really get the necessary look into it because people were dismissing it for things like it's kind of janky and a little bit for some aspects of its movement mechanics, I would believe. But I think overall, this game is very good. It's free to play, right? There's no cost to get into it. And people would assume, oh, it's a NetEase, it's a free to play sci-fi thing like all their other ones. It's going to flop and be a disaster. I wouldn't say that. I would say it's definitely going well. And I would say even something as annoying as the seasonal reset. Every, I think it's 6 to 8 weeks, there'll be a seasonal reset, which resets the map and all your stuff. But you do get to keep some stuff and transfer it to a different base. But people weren't really happy with that. And it turned out not to really be a problem because you could basically transfer most of what you wanted to keep to this eternal realm that you can then bring stuff from that eternal realm to the whatever new realm you go. It's basically just a way to transfer some stuff, right? You're not going to keep everything, but a lot of stuff you do end up keeping. If you want to check out more information about this game, you can check out my review if I go a little bit more in depth into stuff like that, but overall, definitely recommended Once Human in my review there. So number 7 here is Wuthering Waves. Interesting to have a mobile game on here. We're getting a little bit more niche, but I really like Wuthering Waves for just its brazen ability to take something as obvious as its Genshin Impact roots and bring it into something that's a little bit more intent-driven. It is not just trying to copy Genshin beyond its sort of initial UI elements. There's a lot of interesting things in this game, from the combat to the way the world is designed, the style of the world, to the way the characters function, all that, especially with the 2.0 release update. There's a lot here that I think really does set itself apart and above something like Genshin in its design elements of its combat and some of its characters, not all of them, but I think definitely some of its characters are pretty unique in that regard. And it's something that got on my radar because the previous game from this developer, Punching Gray Raven, I believe, was highly praised, right? And it was a similar thing to an older Hoyoverse title, Honkai Impact III. It was similar to that one, and so people were really hyped to get Wuthering Waves because it had some of those unique mechanics. And I definitely think it should be on this list because it launched this year with a whole bunch of other stuff and kind of got left to the wayside. And I definitely think people need to check this game out. Again, similar to other titles in this genre, it's free to play, there's some gacha elements and all that, but overall, if you're just, responsible with that stuff, you're gonna have a really good time. I definitely want to highlight that here because while other games like ZZZ might have taken the spotlight, I definitely wanted to give Wuthering Waves a shout out here. All right, now for number 6, this is a little bit of one that you may have heard, Wayfinder. Wayfinder originally tried to launch in early access as an MMO, FPS, or RPG, similar to something like Warframe, which is interesting because the developers of that game, Digital Extremes, were trying to publish this game. They decided after the disastrous early access launch of the game that they didn't want to do that anymore, and so Airship Syndicate, the developer, had to basically go back to the grindstone for a couple months there, I believe, and figure out how they're going to make this game not an MMO anymore, because they had basically taken all their support and server resources and sucked them away. And so now you can't obviously have a server and an MMO without server costs and maintenance and all that, and they couldn't afford that, so they had to kind of change it, and what they changed it to was a co-op action RPG similar to other, 3-player co-op stuff. Not what I was necessarily looking for, but I do definitely still want to give a shout out to this game of that is a lot, right? It launched in early access at a paid price. It was supposed to go free to play. Their publisher dips on them. They have to redesign the entire thing. Goes back up on sale in early access still at that price, which I'd already bought, so good on there. They ain't charge extra or anything. And then eventually releases 1.0, and it's a finished product with all the stuff that was, theoretically supposed to be paid for cosmetics and all that, just included in the game, which was very good. And so overall, I think that level of quality and that level of intent to just not shutter the entire project and everyone's money is definitely something that should be applauded. And overall, the game, I think, for that does benefit from this more kind of focused aspect. So definitely check out Wayfinder. I believe it's on PC and consoles as well. Wuwa, just by the way, is also on PC as well as mobile, and I believe PlayStation 5 more recently as well. Number 5. Now we're getting into the games that people may not have heard of. These are ones that you may have heard some press or some reviews or everything, but definitely did not nearly get as much attention as the ones that I had just mentioned. Sandland. This is Akira Toriyama's other manga-inspired adaptation. It was part of a giant media push with the manga and the anime and everything like that. Sandland is I guess you could call it a vehicle combat game, maybe similar to something like Twisted Metal or Borderlands or Mad Max or something like that, Rage even, in its vehicle combat, and its design is definitely very almost Dragon Quest or again Akira Toriyama-like. And I really like this game because of that vehicle combat. It looks great, it runs great, that vehicle combat's really good, the design of things is quite interesting. It's not a perfect game, it definitely reviewed to middling reviews, but I think there's a lot in this game, especially if you can get it on a good sale, that's really worth digging into and really worth kind of looking at in its entirety. It's a quite unique game from a developer and from a team here that did try something unique in their last game, which was One Piece Odyssey. Ilka, I believe. Their kind of way of designing these more unique experiences with IP that you would think would just go into another, by the numbers generic RPG or battler or whatever. It doesn't. And I think definitely checking that out because of that, even alone, is something that's definitely worth it because Sandland is a great game. And I definitely think more people need to remember that came out and go get it, right? So definitely if you're interested in that, I believe it's on consoles as well as PC. It's not on mobile or Switch or anything like that. Number 4. This is one that we've all kind of heard about. We've heard about Satisfactory, obviously. We heard about Factorio. There's a little game that came out that I didn't actually even know about because I didn't play the first one. But here it is, Shapes 2. This is a factory building game, functionally speaking, but to me, it's more so about puzzle. It's basically an automation puzzle game. We were trying to create enough of the shapes by moving them, cutting them around, turning them, twisting them, shifting them up layers, doing all that, to be able to get enough shapes into the guzzling void. And what's really nice about this game is there's no resources. You're not resource managing, you're not doing any of that. You're simply building, which is why I qualify this as more of a puzzle game rather than a factory and automation game, because stuff like Satisfactory and Factorio do require you to build and mine and craft and all that. This doesn't. You just make your stuff, move your stuff however you want, redo, rebuild, all that. It's great. Go through the challenges, very nice UI, very nice tutorial, very good music, runs great, It's all the things you kind of want from these factory building games without the kind of slog and intensity of the resource management that tends to come with them. So if that sounds interesting to you and you want like a Factorio or Satisfactory game without all the mining, crafting, grinding, all that stuff, I would definitely check out Shapes 2 in early access right now. So it is just available on PC, but I definitely think that it's something that there's a decent amount of content there already. There's a full campaign and full challenges and all that, and there's a really kind of satisfying loop there that I think really hits, apart from the other games that maybe are a little bit more, not survival-like, but a little bit longer tail. So I really like that game. Basically instant satisfaction, as well as an instant recommend. Now, number 3, these are the top 3 we have here. This is another game in early access that I think not really anyone was aware of because it kind of released in a rough time. This is Windblown. This is the next game from Motion Twin, the developer of Dead Cells. It's pretty similar to Dead Cells. I would also add a little bit of Hades into it. It is a co-op, potentially, but you can play it solo. Action RPG-ish format, roguelike in the form of Hades. Most similar to Hades because of that kind of nature. You're going through different things. You're dodging a lot. You're hitting a lot. You're fighting bosses and stuff. And then you're dying and going back to your camp and upgrading it and that kind of thing that Hades kind of popularized, right? This game is quite unique for a couple aspects. Its art style is very good. It runs very well. It is incredibly responsive and well designed there. The colors and the kind of saturation and the way the art style works with the colors is really nice. The music is pretty interesting, I would say, for a game like this. And overall, while it is an early access and there's a little bit, content light, I think you can beat it in about 10 to 14 hours, which is a little quick for these type of games. I definitely think this is one to keep your eye out and one I definitely want to highlight because while I haven't put personally a ton of time into this game, the time I have put, I've been really enjoying it and I'm quite interested to see kind of where it goes. And it's definitely a game that a lot of people might not even realize is out because there was quite little marketing done near its release. There was like a reveal trailer and that was basically it. So check out Windblown. It's available Steam Early Access right now. All right, these last two are really the reason that these video got made. I wanted to highlight these two games because they released, they got really great reviews, and literally no one played them. The first one is Lil Guardsman. This is a Papers, Please style game where you are tasked with investigating these people that come into the shed or the tavern or whatever you're dealing with here and figuring out if they're allowed to pass. You do this by, investigating them, using different items on them, calling people, checking the board to see what's allowed, that kind of thing. The two things that make this game unique, beyond its kind of quality of its writing and its animation, are the fact that the choices that you make in every given thing, even if they are the correct choices, affect the longer term aspects of the game. So early on, you'll get someone that isn't supposed to be there, is basically stealing money or something, and you reject them. You determine they're stealing money and you reject them. But because of that, the bank burns down in a fire. Well, because the bank burns down, you now have to try harder in your next, your next judgments to get a higher score, which is basically the correct answer. And if you don't, you fail that level, right? And if you let him through, that's a bad score, but then the bank doesn't burn down. So then you're able to basically do worse and not need to get that minimum score and all that, right? And so there's a couple other examples, but that's just an early on one where the choices you make, whether they are the correct ones or not, affect the later choices that you can make. Those are things that, are remembering. There's another one where there's a painter, right? What's your favorite color? Oh, it's green. Okay, we're going to paint it green. That then leads over to another thing where depending on the color you paint, you get certain bonuses, right? There's some stuff like that that's quite interesting. The other thing that makes it interesting is there's always a rewind mechanic. You early on get this thing that allows you to rewind whatever you're doing, and that has a couple implications for the story later on. But I think those two mechanics, the fact that you have things that affect the story later on and choices that affect the story, and the rewind mechanic on top of the quality of its writing, the great voice acting, the good music, how well it runs, it's a fantastic game. It's a little on the shorter side. I think it's like 8.5 to 9 hours, and there's not really any replayability unlike something like Papers, Please would be. But I definitely highly recommend the game. It's only like $15. It's on Switch, Steam, I believe, as well as consoles. So definitely check it out if you're interested in those kind of games and what you've been seeing on screen. Okay. Now, the last game here that I'm going to be talking about is one that almost no one has played. I've checked the Steam charts. There's 80 people playing it at the maximum time has ever been. There's like no one playing it on Steam right now. It got a total of 200 reviews. It got 2 sponsored reviews on YouTube, and that is literally it. This is the reason this list was made. This is the thing I'm trying to highlight here. Beyond Galaxyland. It is a sci-fi RPG similar to something like Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy or other games in that genre. It has the art style of something like Dave the Divers, the closest comparison, and it is a great turn-based sci-fi game with those aesthetics and that style. Great soundtrack, great characters, good movement and animation and art style and all that. It is great. It is a little on the short side, about 12 to 14 hours, which is pretty short for like an RPG or a turn-based game. But really, if there's anything you take away from this list, you need to play this game, you need to buy this game. I believe it's on Switch, it's on consoles and Steam. It's like $15. It's fantastic. It doesn't have enough promotion on it. So if I can highlight it, that'd be great. It's just a really great game, really good mechanics, really solid implementation of turn-based combat, and the way it's able to use its abilities and status effects and stuff. It's great. Definitely check it out if you're interested in, again, Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy or Dave the Diver, just art style-wise, or any sci-fi RPGs in general. You're going to really love this game. So those are the 10. Got Prince of Persia at 10. Number 9, Unicorn Overlord. 8 was Once Human. 7 is Wuthering Waves. 6, Wayfinder. 5, Sandland. 4, Shapes 2. 3, Windblown. 2, Lil Guardsman. And 1, Beyond Galaxyland. Hopefully that was a pretty good list, pretty good variety of different genres and everything like that. If you like these videos and want to see more of them on the channel, kind of these recaps, then make sure hit the subscribe button, like, comment, do all that stuff, as well as check out my main channel, MacGibs, where I do weekly videos for tech content. So, I'll see everyone in the next video.